Hello and welcome back to the Diary of the Coffee Hunter, the YouTube channel that takes you around the world of coffee and everything in it. Thank you very much for watching this and other videos on it. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, like the content on this channel, and also leave a comment. All feedback and comments are welcome. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that I did 15 years ago, before it was even a trend as it is now. And at that time, it was bold, but at the same time, perhaps even stupid. And today I'm going to sit down and share my experience and hopefully also share some of the lessons which I believe are timeless, whatever the time or whenever you decide to do what I tried to do 15 years ago. But today I've got this wonderful bag of coffee from Zimunda Estate in Vumba, and that's the one that I'm going to be putting through the V60, and then I'll sit down and then we'll talk about my experience as a diaspora relocating back to Zimbabwe. But I did mine 15 years ago, but here now I am back in the UK and I'll talk all about it.
Shangamire coffee by the kings. Coffee, Shangamire coffee by the kings. Coffee, kumene ndipeiwo chikari chemene ndoda wokututa.
Nice, Zimunda. Right, let's sit down and talk.
Shangamire coffee.
Welcome back to the Diary of the Coffee Hunter, a YouTube channel where we explore the world of coffee, and here and there we also share other matters of general interest. Please subscribe to the channel and also like and comment on the videos on it. Otherwise, thank you very much for checking back and being a part of this journey and everything that is happening here. Remember, everything in this world is either coffee or not a coffee. Now, there is a wisdom validation Shona proverb which says, "Takava neko kumunga hakuna pha." The loose meaning being that I've been there, done that, and I've got a t-shirt to prove it. As far as diaspora relocation is concerned, I have certainly been there and have done that. I may not have the t-shirt to prove, but I have certainly been there. My experience has got context though. And that context may be different from what is happening now because mine was 15 years ago. I did this 15 years ago. The Zimbabwe I went back to was certainly not the Zimbabwe you will walk back now, but there are certain fundamentals that do not change. So for a start, the time that I went there 15 years ago, we didn't have your Kelvin Biriotis and other content creators curating and showcasing different relocation experiences and the different stories. YouTube was still in its infancy back then, and barely anybody was spending an amount of time on it anyway. And then, of course, the political landscape was totally different. However, there are certain fundamental truths that cannot be escaped about relocating back to Zimbabwe, whether it was 10 years ago, whether it's now, or whether it's 10 years in the future. And I'm going to talk about what I think will always apply to Zimbabwe for any diasporan looking to go back based on my experience 15 years ago. Oh, by the way, while you are also here, may I invite you to visit, if you are in Zimbabwe, to visit the website zimbabwe.changamire.coffee. You will be able to now order your coffee from there. And we're currently delivering to Harare for pickup. So if you go there, you can order in the 250 gram bags or 1 kilogram bag. If you want the 1 kilogram bag, we won't grind it for you. But if you want the 250 gram bag, that can come ground to whatever your coffee maker takes. So 15 years ago, I like to call it a partial relocation. I did so in 2010 during the time of the Government of National Unity, the GNU. At the end of March, I got on a plane with a 40-foot container in tow following, and I landed in Zimbabwe. And it was a period of relative stability economically and politically, following the difficult years of 2007 and, of course, 2008. The early part of the GNU was filled with a genuine air of positive expectations, and it had prospects. It was evident that people had resolved to put aside whatever political differences they may have had at the time in order to pull together as a country and drag it from the mess it had found itself in. This was, of course, the time of dollarization after the collapse of the Zim dollar. You could see it was palpable that people were really excited about the stability, and people wanted to work. If you went into the CBD, you would see people really, the step was quicker, shoulders were higher, chests were out. People wanted to work. It was evident that people really were cherishing this opportunity to actually show what it means to be a Zimbabwean in an environment that enables you to do what you can do. And I think that's when the buzzword of entrepreneurship really took off, because we even had some world-known names such as Stephen Covey and others, and a lot of these world-renowned speakers and entrepreneurs were coming to Zimbabwe. And of course, being paid in US dollar, it helped, because even a lot of artists also came to Zimbabwe to perform. However, the optimistic energy kind of lasted until the end of 2010. I would say probably into mid-2011. Because from about mid-2011 going onwards, it was very clear that the other party to the GNU was more interested in recalibrating itself so that it can gain 100% of power once the elections were called. At that time, they were being expected to be called either in 2012 or in 2013, and eventually they were held in 2013. But anyway, that's a story for another day. What I wanted to talk about today was, based on my own experiences, of course, the things that I felt then and I still feel are very, very necessary. The fundamental truths, I'll call them that, about relocating to Zimbabwe. Everything at the end of the day comes down to finances. It comes down to income. It comes down to financial resources. A lot of things can be planned around a lot of other things, but ultimately it comes down to financial resources. Now, for me, the key thing that I discovered and I found out and I learned during the time that I came to Zimbabwe, which I think still apply now, is that in Zimbabwe, you need at least three types of projects that are going on at the same time. So the first project you need is that smallish hustle that gives you whatever little income, but that income is coming sort of like daily or every other day, and that will cover the cost of your airtime, your data, maybe fuel as well, and toll gates if you're going to be traveling an amount of distance that takes you beyond the toll gates. And this is crucial. This doesn't have to be anything fancy, but you just need something that gives you $5 a day or $10 a day as you go. And it's very, very crucial that you have that level of income. And then the second project that you need is another gig that gives you a slightly larger amount, but this could be maybe once every week or every 2 weeks. And this will cover your food, your general household expenses, and it will also fund your social life, social life in particular, because Zimbabwe is a very human contact, human interaction society. You need to be out and about and be in these networking events and be a part of these communities or this society that you may choose. You just need to be a part of a community that you engage on a daily basis or on as frequently as you can, because a lot of things do happen, and the information that you need to actually get that step ahead comes from you being connected or being tethered to a certain community. Just find your community and be a part of it. You have to be in spaces and events where people socialize and network. And there are a lot of those going about in Zimbabwe. They were there back then. They are still there, and I'm sure that will remain going forward. And your third is perhaps your dream or your marquee project, the one that you left the diaspora for, the one that you said, I am going home to show what I have learned in the diaspora, and this is my project. This may take time to establish, and even once it gets going, it will probably give you that large amount once every 6 months or every couple of months, depending on what it is. Of course, it is possible to have one project that will cover all three, depending on what that project is. So for me, we had a catering trailer, which during the week would be selling sadza and bonds for $1 a plate to the guys that were loading bricks into trucks at Wildale in Mount Hamden. And then during the weekends, I had managed to use some of my old networks. Like I said, networking is very important in Zimbabwe. I'd managed to use some of my old networks to access Harare Sports Club with the food trailer during cricket matches. There, I could sell a burger and chips for like $7, or if I get T-bone steak, I would sell that T-bone steak for something like, with chips, for something like $12. I'll get my meat from two places. There was Caswell and Montana around the corner near the hospital, Gomo Hospital. And if you do the math, really, you'd see that I think at that time it was $4 or $5 would get you a kilogram of T-bone, which you would then slice into 8 to 10 cuts. And each cut with chips, you then sell for something like $12. So that was really a good earner. And then what I then did, besides the food truck, I then realized I could leverage my financial industry experience in the UK. So I set up sort of like a consultancy of sorts. And then that became my number 2 income project. It, however, brought with it a lot of frustration and stress, because in most cases, I would spend half of my time or half my week chasing invoices. Now, Zimbabwe is a place where you are better off having a physical product that you are exchanging for money. If you are doing consultancy and you are providing a service, you have to be that good that whoever you are providing the service to will pay you in advance. But if you deliver a service and then you then raise an invoice on the back of that service, receiving your payment can be a pain, and there is absolutely nothing that you can do. I know now there is sort of like a credit bureau where you can eventually register somebody who has failed to pay. But at the time I was there was no other means of paying. For example, in the UK, you can actually create a lot of financial problems for somebody who is not paying you by applying that that debt be registered with the county court. And one thing that you would want to avoid in the UK is a county court judgment. So there is a certain compulsion for one to pay their debts before it gets that far. But in Zimbabwe, at the time, there was nothing. But even now, the worst that will happen to somebody who owes you money, if you are successful in lodging that debt with the credit bureau, is that they will just be listed. That doesn't mean you will get your money. They will just have the financial difficulty of maybe opening another bank account or maybe doing other things. But that does not necessarily compel them to pay you. you cannot send bailiffs. I don't think, I mean, I'm sure you can get a court order or some kind, but I mean, if you're doing a certain service where all you are invoicing a couple of $100 here, maybe up to 1,000 as you go along, it's going to be difficult for you to be getting the sheriff to be picking up people's goods from their homes because they failed to pay. So chasing payments for services that have been rendered is a nightmare. But if you are doing something that is a physical product where you are selling, I don't know, a fridge, for example, which you can go and collect and take back because somebody has failed to pay, then that's something that is a lot better. So I did set up the consultancy anyway, but yeah, it was tough. I mean, you go to somebody who is in some building that has got no lifts and it's October and it's 40 degrees outside and they are on like the 5th floor or the 6th floor, and you have to go up the staircase and you get there, and then you are told, look, the person who signs this with the second signatory has traveled to South Africa. They're only coming back tomorrow, and then you have to come back tomorrow. You do the same thing, and because you after doing the same thing in that heat, it's a different story this time. A story I often tell without naming the organization is that I once wrote off a few $1,000s owed by a blue chip ZSE listed company because having to drive to their headquarters daily to be given excuses was just becoming too costly. So at some point I just said, you know what, keep the money. And that actually happened. It's a sad reality, but things can happen to Zimbabwe. So the issues of Zimbabwe is not just, small players, even the big players, they're reputable, supposedly reputable brands and organization could actually let you down. One of the biggest problems that I had was that I had young children. I had 2 children that were of school-going age, one starting grade 1 and another one in grade 3. So what we had done strategically, we had said I would go, and then because of the nature of the work that my wife and I were doing, it was better for her to perhaps remain behind for a bit and then be coming down and moving backwards and forwards until we really got some stability going. So the problem with that is when I was in Zimbabwe with the kids alone, managing the school run and various other activities that that the children needed to be a part of was really difficult. And it was even more so made difficult by the fact that you are also a little bit anxious or nervous about sort of like just letting your children loose, especially them coming from a setting like the United Kingdom, and this is a new environment. So you can be overly protective and you want to really be close to the action of everything that they are doing and be present in most of the time. So the effect of that is your day would start in the morning, but around 1 o'clock, you've got to be near or around the school so that you can either pick them up or you can, go with them home, assist with homework, or, take them to pick up whatever ice cream or anything. Because one of the things that happens when you've brought kids from the diaspora is that you are trying your level best that they retain some of the experiences that they were accustomed to. So that was quite a challenge. That was quite a burden. So your day essentially is half a day. And once you've done that, you've gone back. By the time you think, okay, they're settled, you've spent enough time with your children around maybe 3 p.m. For you to then get out and try and do anything in Harare, it was a nightmare. It was never going. It's difficult to accomplish more than 2 things in Harare anyway, because meetings don't just happen. You can have a meeting that is scheduled for 10 o'clock and you go there, you sit for another hour, and the meeting will probably happen after 11. And yeah, so Zimbabwe operates in that manner at times, I have to add. So while things have changed quite a bit over the last 15 years, the 3-tier income source remains a must. If you haven't figured out where you are going to get $1 or $2 or $5 every single day, and where you are going to get $50, $100 every week or two, while you are chasing your dream or while you are setting up your dream, relocating to Zimbabwe is going to be very, very difficult. I benefit now from the fact that my kids are done with school completely. So I have the luxury of going to Zimbabwe whenever I want. And if I then decide, as we are doing, we are preparing what we've called our retirement home in Buhera. And that's okay. I do not have to worry about anything. I think my children are okay. They can fend for themselves based on where they are now. So yeah, so like I said, I've been there, done that, and may not have the t-shirt to prove it, but it's certainly something that I am keen on doing again, and this time with wisdom and totally a different context. And by the way, I didn't say why I ended up returning after 2 years. A combination of things. Primarily, one had to do with faith,
by the kings. Coffee.
But at the same time, the environment in Zimbabwe was changing, and it was changing dramatically. That kind of utopia of the GNU was fading, and the political tension was beginning to kind of heat up again. And I wasn't going to wait for that, especially with the young children still in primary school. So yeah, at the beginning of 2012, packed my bags. It doesn't matter that I had taken a 40-foot container with me to go back, packed my bag, and then came back to the United Kingdom. And when I landed back, I had already made a vow that I would never go back into the financial industry. So, and that's pretty much how I started the journey into coffee, because I loved a good cup of coffee anyway. So yeah, I thought, why not? So here we are. We are another, how many years since returning? 13 years. And now I am fully in coffee. So I enjoy. So thank you very much for watching. And tune back in for the next video. If you've got any comments, anything that you've experienced yourself, whether you've tried to go back to Zimbabwe and things didn't work out, and however much they've worked out, please share. I would like to have a conversation. I would like to hear, as we also prepare to make that bold move. It is a bold move, but it's not something to be done when you're not properly prepared.
Coffee by the kings. Coffee.